Our story begins with a man named Fataku who called himself a nobody. Because of this, he suffered a lot in school. So he decided to study, believing that if he worked hard and earned a lot of money, all those problems would eventually disappear from his life. It might have worked, except for one thing. He was really fat and not at all intelligent. After finishing school, the only opportunity he had was to become a sparring partner. And that was because the weight requirement to become a sparring partner was over 100 kilos. Soon after, the same situation repeated itself when the other members of the gym beat him up. "Alone!" he cried, unable to understand why everyone wanted to bully him. Soon after, his superior mag ranking approached and asked Xiao Wu to handle the monthly report. He awkwardly tried to claim that his job was just to be a sparring partner. But in response, the superior showed off his muscles and stared at him in a frightening manner. So the young man immediately agreed to handle the report and submit it as soon as possible. Once the task was accepted, Magrenging called the employee again, but Xiao Wu simply turned his face away. At that very moment, the other team members appeared from the shadows and also asked for help with their schedules. Faced with all the new requests, the young man's expression completely changed. Still, he smiled and agreed to take care of everything for the team. By midnight, the situation had changed. Sitting at his computer, he regretted his refusal because he wouldn't even get a raise. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit his chest. At that very moment, he remembered the doctor's warning that he would die if he didn't lose weight. In desperation, he stretched out his hand to his side, trying to call an ambulance. Soon, a message appeared on his phone, stating that the service had been suspended due to insolvency. Since the young man could do nothing more, he simply accepted that he would die on the spot. Before he died, he decided that he had to change and could no longer continue living like that. He then moved his mouse cursor to delete the folder called Study Materials. Once the action was completed, he laid his head on the table, finally at peace with himself. His last wish was not to be a fat and obnoxious otaku in the next life. However, his fingers slipped and he accidentally pressed the send to all button. Instead, just before the new message appeared, Mag Ranjing seemed impressed to see that Xiao had been reported. At the same time, the contents of the study folder were revealed. At that moment, the entire office team reacted in shock to what was seen on the conference room screen. Suddenly, his eyes widened right after his rebirth as a baby, and he questioned whether it was really a new beginning. 20,000 years passed on the Kyushu continent. Then, a young girl grabbed his hand and called his name. With that said, Tu Shangxiao reminded her of their promise to explore the world behind the mountain together. Then the girl commented that she had been training there for 20,000 years without even realizing the passage of time. Finally, the young man claimed that he was just an ordinary person who would only cause trouble if he went down the mountain. However, Koyu could not understand how an ordinary person could lift the mountain. At that moment, she confirmed to herself that she had truly been reborn. Her new life was as a young master of a demonic sect. For this reason, she hid to train because the sect was fading and could not protect her. The girl just smiled and thought about how this company saved her from boredom. The lessons of her past life motivated her to train hard for 2 millennia. However, after such a long time, she finally realized something while walking beside him. Suddenly, a giant snake appeared in front of them, making her realize that she had been transported to a fantasy world. Yet, she still saw herself as a true Wuingan, but without spiritual roots. As soon as the creature lunged forward, she thought that it had nothing more than its physical strength. In an instant, she prepared a fist with her clenched hand. The blow hit directly into the snake's body, releasing a massive shockwave. Immediately afterwards, the force tore through the creature and opened an opening into the forest. Small debris rained down from the sky as she watched the outcome. With that said, the young man suggested that they eat the snake's flesh, and the girl enthusiastically agreed. His companion looked at him admiringly, impressed that he had defeated a golden core-level dragon. Suddenly, a voice interrupted them as they prepared to cut the flesh. At that very moment, the floating swordsman accused them of stealing the dragon he had been hunting. The academy's instructor, Xiao Chunhu, declared them to be members of a demonic sect. The young man stared back at him, his expression unchanged. Soon after, he denied the accusation, wondering how the man had found them. Without a moment's hesitation, he bowed to the ground and began to apologize. The instructor observed the pair, knowing that they were just a fox demon and an ordinary human with no spiritual roots. So he decided that he didn't need to waste any more words on them. Immediately after, he attacked with his sword using another form of his technique. As the weapon was launched towards him, Wingan caught it in mid-air, leaving the instructor stunned. Even as he bowed, he apologized for grabbing the sword, which left Yahello confused by the situation. The opponent refused to believe it, as an ordinary human could never stop his flying sword. So, he turned to the girl and accused her of secretly helping the young man. After a moment's hesitation, his expression changed. The man decided that they would both die for their arrogance and attacked with 2 swords. Once again, Wingan caught the blades in the air, startling his opponent. Soon he bowed again and asked the instructor to kill him, but not to harm Choyu. The instructor then summoned dozens of swords and threw them at the girl. Without hesitation, the young man stepped in front of him as the weapons approached. With quick movements, he plunged into the blades to stop them all. Finally, he held each sword in his hand and apologized for his instinctive grab. The opponent froze, not knowing how to react to the situation. Quickly, his demeanor changed and he apologized, called the young man's parent, and claimed it was a misunderstanding. Then he asked for his sword back so he could leave immediately. At that moment, the attack missed his head. Fire was fired towards the forest, causing a massive explosion in the distance. Wulingen agreed to return the weapons, unable to refuse the request. After saying this, the instructor looked at his own body and noticed the damage he had sustained. The young man turned and said that they had to return home to cook food for his father and the others. As they began to walk away, Yahello turned to the man to talk about what had happened. With a grim aura on his face, he threatened the man and told him not to dare mention the matter to anyone. Horrified, the instructor complied with his orders several times. Shortly after, the young man called him to leave and he ran after him. The man alone watched as the 2 disappeared into the distance, carrying a giant snake. As soon as they were out of sight, he fell to his knees, wondering who these people were. His expression darkened as he thought that their happiness would not last long. Immediately after that, she burst out laughing and planned to tell the old ancestor of the academy about what had happened so that the demonic cultivators would pay the price. Choyu commented that even though Lingan was able to defeat the cultivators, he claimed to be an ordinary human. However, he denied being the cultivators' opponent, while the girl claimed that the man had clearly tried to kill her. Since he had no spiritual roots, the young man explained that this was why he trained his body even harder. As they walked, the girl noticed that the man didn't need to train so relentlessly all the time. Still, the young girl found it adorable how unaware of his own strength his companion seemed. Soon, the landscape changed, revealing mountains in the distance. Next, the young man carried the pieces of meat to the mouth of the cave and announced that he was going inside. However, a sign at the entrance warned of a demonic presence and unforgivable crimes. Inside, a large cauldron was placed on the fire. Suddenly, an imposing man appeared from the shadows, threatening death to anyone who dared to trespass on the demonic sex scene. Unperturbed, Wingan simply smiled and announced that he had brought snake meat. The group's expression immediately changed completely as they welcomed the little visitor. Behind the bars, everyone begged for meat, saying that it smelled wonderful and that they were hungry. The young man explained that, despite their appearance, they were uncles who were taking care of him. However, the group leader turned his face away in dissatisfaction. At that moment, the sect leader Wei asked if the boy still considered him his father, since he had not seen him for 3 hours. But the boy justified himself by saying that hunting and cooking had delayed him, although his father replied that he knew what was happening outside. Then the elder accused the girl of trying to get him to come down the mountain again. The young man denied it. The leader's response was a furious shout in which he categorically rejected the request. The outburst left both the boy and Choyu shocked. Even though Woody had been sealed away for 20 millennia, he claimed to still remember the cunning of the righteous sex. Having said this, he asked if the boy wanted his own father to bury him, which prompted the young man to apologize. However, he hesitated for a moment before continuing. Shortly after, the patriarch exploded, saying that he had heard the same excuses for 20,000 years. The boy's attitude left the man completely speechless. Still, Lincoln announced that he no longer wanted to stay in the forest, even if it meant hunting or killing. The other members then called him naive, reminding him that he was the last of the family and that leaving would be suicide. At that moment, Choyu interrupted the conversation to reveal that they had encountered a righteous farmer, and he revealed that his companion had defeated him with 1 blow. Although he tried to claim that it was just a misunderstanding, upon hearing this, Woody silently questioned whether the boy had really grown so strong, but he still shouted that Lingan was just an ordinary person without spiritual roots. Next, he asked how his son would face stronger cultivators, which worried the girl. So, the father warned him not to consider himself invincible just because he had defeated a few enemies. But the young man replied that he had never spoken of his invincibility and was not interested in such things. He revealed that his true goal was to break the seal and save them, something he could never achieve in the forest. We then turned to the others and asked if they had told his son this, but they all denied it. At that moment, the boy remembered how his father, even when he was sealed, had always cared about protecting him. Now they were adults. He declared that it was his turn to protect the elder. At this point, Xiu interrupted them to remind them of something they had forgotten. He explained that since his companion did not have a demonic aura, his identity would not be revealed, and the others agreed. Still, we refused to take the risk, as any further progress would release his aura and kill him. The boy then turned to leave, asking not to be blamed for the decision he had already made. As soon as he turned his back, he heard his father yell at him to stop. Immediately afterwards, an object was thrown towards him. He caught it in the air, and Xiaoyu glanced at the object as well. The young man did not understand, so he asked what object he had in his hands. The elder explained that it was the qualification for the Suinin Academy exam, suggesting it as the first destination for the trip. The group was immediately excited by the news, as the academy was famous for training golden core-level cultivators. Ben Xiaoyu questioned the decision, but Wudai argued that the most dangerous place was also the safest. With this, the young man realized that there he would find countless cultivation paths and might find one for himself. Next, he began to pack his belongings into a large bundle. Stephen appeared ready to leave with a huge burden, announcing his departure to Xuanqin Academy. Curious, the girl asked how her father had obtained the item, but he refused to answer. Mui then admitted that he could no longer protect his son. Therefore, sending him to the academy was the best way to keep him alive. As the young man studied the secret map, the patriarch spoke to the girl about the mystery surrounding Lingan's body. Then he asked this, a nearly emperor-level 9-tailed fox, to protect him. Koyu raised his hand to confirm that he understood the seriousness of the matter. Then he asked who would bring them food after he and the boy left. In the background, the entire group froze as they realized the situation. Finally, Wei shouted to everyone to eat, as it would be their last proper meal. Xiao then sent her a farewell message and told her to enjoy the moment. As soon as she turned around, he shouted at her to wait, but the girl immediately warned him not to bring any more food. Then, her father reminded her with a serious expression that the world was on the verge of collapse. Immediately after that, he warned that the latent power within Lingan needed to be awakened as time was running out. At the same time, the scene shifted to the impressive entrance of the Suintinian Academy. There, one of the instructors organized a line and told everyone to maintain order and not to rush forward. The candidates were also instructed to prepare their tokens for the entrance exam. Carrying their luggage, the young Wulingan observed the place, hoping not to attract anyone's attention. The instructor explained that the tokens had to be inserted into the mouth of the stone lion to detect spies. Shortly after, he called the first person in line to step forward. The candidate placed the object in the statue, which glowed, confirming his admission. Upon receiving approval, the young man thanked them and entered the academy. Next, the instructor called the next candidate in line. In the background, the new entrant panicked, wondering if his token was fake and if it would be detected. Suddenly, a scream caught the attention of everyone in line. The examiner announced that the demonic cultivator had been found, as the statue grabbed the candidate's hand. One of the bystanders explained that the stone lion did not let go when it detected the anomaly, leaving the observer horrified. The imprisoned man begged for mercy, but the instructor ordered the guards to take him away. Immediately afterwards, the examiner and another candidate pointed to the boy and announced that it was his turn. Then the instructor noticed him suspiciously because of his large backpack and ordered him to place the token in the statue. Repeating to himself so as not to make a mistake, he approached the stone statue with a trembling hand. Suddenly, the other candidates felt a tremor run through the floor of the courtyard. With that said, the young man put his hand in the mouth of the stone lion. The instructor confirmed that the entrance ticket was in order and the statue glowed. Immediately after a sigh of relief, the creature's eyes shone and red energy began to radiate. In an instant, the statue pressed hard against his arm. The lion's head detached from its pedestal and remained locked in his arm. Then the rest of the statue's body crumbled into pieces, leaving the examiner stunned. He stood frozen, not understanding what had happened, the heads still attached to his arm. The young man clumsily apologized and tried to repair the damage by picking up the pieces from the ground. The instructor then accused him of being a demonic cultivator and ordered him to be immediately arrested. As the guards detained him, He tried to argue that the ticket was valid. At that time, the investigator explained that the lion would automatically attack whenever it sensed demonic energy. Only then did the young man realize that he had been contaminated by a demonic aura while living among others. Suddenly, Shoi's voice echoed in the courtyard, ordering everyone to stop. The fox, appearing, questioned the careless actions of the cultivators while everyone else wondered who he was. The instructor then asked why a member of the monster clan was interfering in the affairs of the academy. With that said, the young girl grabbed Lingan's arm and introduced herself as his protector. The revelation surprised the other candidates, who whispered that the boy must have an important background. Next, Xiao suggested that the inspector verify the origin of the entrance ticket. Looking down at the object on the ground, the man recognized it as belonging to the legendary number 1 sect in the world. He then explained that the sect had been destroyed 20,000 years ago and that Lingan was its only follower. One of the candidates questioned how the most powerful sect in the world could have been destroyed. Immediately afterwards, he himself added that the sect's name was literally just that. Xiaoyu argued that it was understandable that the flag would be contaminated with demonic energy. The instructor reasoned that the situation was delicate and needed to be handled with caution. Still, he warned the two not to do anything suspicious and to behave appropriately. Xiaoyu then told the young man not to tense up as he walked so that no one would doubt the girl's advice to behave as usual, and repeated the woman's suggestion. Thus the view opened up, revealing the architecture of Suenin Academy. Soon a group of new students gathered in front of the tower, which welcomed them. From above, the Mayan Academy teacher silently observed them all. Next, Master Huang Luhong approached to ask about the new students of the year. The examiner pointed out that there were several promising candidates in the courtyard. Among them were Bed from Yujian Peak and the young master T. Shanka from the Huan sect. The young man didn't bother to linger but invited the girl to practice dual cultivation with him. But with a serious expression, the girl simply told him to disappear from his sight. Around them, others whispered that the girl was a super genius, the daughter of the master of Eugene Peak. Still, Bad concluded that his father was right, and none of the newcomers were worthy of his attention. From above, Instructor Mei commented on the level of the students, but hesitated for a moment. He sensed that something strange had mixed in with the group. Wu Lingan tried to act normal, while Master Huang laughed, thinking that he was just someone who wanted to show off his new powers. However, the examiner Mai doubted that he would pass the first exam with such a pompous behavior. Immediately after, one of the assistants rushed out. From the top of the tower, the instructor floated into the air, attracting everyone's attention and impressing them. Then he introduced himself as Mei Yanli, the person in charge of the assessment, and announced the start of the exam. He explained that only those who passed all the stages would end up as students of the academy. Young Lingan's observations showed that the instructor's face looked familiar. The man asked him directly why he was staring at him like that. The boy didn't know what to say, so he hesitated for a moment. Soon after, he pointed to a loose, shiny thread hanging from the instructor's robe. Hearing the remark, the assessor remained silent for a moment. Suddenly, he quickly descended to the group of students. With a frightening look, he congratulated the newcomer and said that he was eagerly awaiting his results. Frozen in place, Instructor Mei tried to start speaking. Then he scolded the other person for not stopping at the designated spot. Beg watched the situation, unable to understand why the evaluator couldn't fly and how the newcomer dared to point it out. Huang's master commented that the boy was in trouble after insulting the man in question. In a moment, the instructor freed himself from the wire that was trapping him. He explained that it had only been to lighten the mood and signal the start of the first stage of the test. Wooling was left wondering if the evaluator was crazy and if it was really necessary to tear his clothes for the test. The other two students noticed the man's strong muscles and intimidating aura. Soon, one of them recognized him as the legendary bearer of the sacred punching bag body. This ability prevented active cultivation and the use of spells. Instead, the body absorbed attacks and captured spiritual energy, growing stronger with each blow. It made the user immune to all attacks from opponents of the same level. Thus the sight left Lingan shocked, and he wondered if only Emsuis could become cultivators. The instructor then announced that each candidate would have to beat him so that he could assess their potential. Smiling, the man thought that by mastering the test, he could ensure the boy's failure. He then pointed at Woolingen and told him to start first, but the young man only warned him to prepare himself, as he was quite strong. The examiner laughed and said that even a smart soul-level cultivator could not harm him. Just as he continued to praise his perseverance, he was interrupted. The punch hit him squarely in the face before he could finish his sentence. A shockwave swept through the instructor and destroyed part of the academy behind him. All the other candidates stood frozen, completely paralyzed by the sight. Meanwhile, Master Huan looked out the window, sweating and unable to believe what he was seeing. Then he turned his gaze towards the huge crater that the blow had created and carved a path through the mountains. With a flash of light, he realized that everything was over for him. In the middle of the ruins, the instructor sat on the ground, smoke rising from his body. With his eyes wide and foaming at the mouth, the man appeared completely unconscious. Not understanding the seriousness of the situation, the young man turned to the others and asked if this meant he had passed the exam. In response, the other candidates simply stepped back in silence. From above, a fox jumped nimbly from the roof. Stating Xiaoyu observed the situation and noticed how Lingen had already attracted everyone's attention. In the crowd, one of the students questioned how the examiner had been affected by the theory that had claimed otherwise. Having said this, Bagi turned to the newcomer and asked how he had managed to achieve such a feat. At the same time, Master Huang approached the instructor lying on the ground. He quickly assessed that the force of the blow was almost at the level of a deceased soul. Suddenly the man's eyes widened. He rose from the ground in an instant. Then he rushed to the young man with a strange expression. As soon as he arrived, he accused him of the blow in the face as a surprise, as the young man apologized. Then one of the examinees concluded that the sacred body had not resisted because he had been surprised. The examiner warned that the previous test did not count, and that he would fail if he used the tricks again. Next, a golden aura surrounded his body and activated the ability. One of the students recognized the technique as the sacred body's ultimate defensive move. The instructor then boasted that even with full strength he could not move him. Without hesitation, the young man landed a direct punch to the stomach. The fist sank into the man's body, but he did not move. The audience commented with respect that the examiner had not even moved his legs from the force of the blow. However, Master Wang realized that there was something wrong with his reaction. Soon after, it was revealed that the instructor Main had fainted when he stood up. Master Huang then intervened and announced that everyone had passed the first round. The candidate celebrated the news and was still amazed at the young man's level of strength. Next, a student came to introduce himself to Wu Lingen. He revealed himself to be Jiang Ma, a follower of the Huin sect, and listed his abilities. Thus, he decided to accept Lingen as his brother, which left the young man uncomfortable with the idea. At the same time, other candidates approached and asked to be his younger brothers. Soon after, the boy introduced himself as TNG from the TNG sect and gave detailed information. Apologizing, he admitted that although he had gathered information, he had nothing on his new brother. Finally, Lingen felt a sense of familiarity with his friendly attitude. Then Tingyi asked what sect or school Wu Lingen belonged to. Embarrassed, Wu Lingen replied that he was just a lone farmer. Suddenly the crowd parted, making way for Eugene Peak's genius. With that said, the young girl accused him of being attention-seeking and promised to show him the difference between them. Immediately after, the girl turned and walked away as Tingyi watched her. In the background, a hooded figure watched the crowd. Quan's master shouted for no one to celebrate too soon. Hit pressed the red button on the controller he held in his hand. The ground beneath the candidates lit up, and everyone wondered what exactly was happening. Amidst the tremors, the group found themselves in a dark, enclosed space. From the outside, the structure revealed itself to be a massive metal cube. From within the cube, several robotic beings and mechanical knights appeared before them. Immediately after being transported, the candidates found themselves surrounded by warriors clad in giant armor. From above, the view revealed how small they were compared to the machines surrounding them. Smiling, Hang Luhong introduced himself as the master of the Gicho Pavilion and the inspector of the second stage. He then explained that all of the puppet machines in the chamber were created by his pavilion. The test required dodging hidden weapons that would be continuously fired at them. He soon lit a stick of incense and warned that the challenge would last until the flame died down. Chenge then began to warn that the weapons fired by the puppet machines were dangerous. In an instant, the machines' eyes lit up, confirming that they were real. After that, the robots began to fire energy blasts at the candidates. The students ran desperately to dodge the attacks that exploded all over the ground. The machines continued to fire non-stop. Many were hit by the explosions and gave up the test almost immediately. From a distance, Huang Luhong noticed that the boy from the Huan sect was doing well. Jay activated his technique and stood still as the beams of light curved around him. Smiling, he boasted that no one could hit him from behind with that ability. Immediately afterwards, however, a beam of light hit him directly in the chest. The tester only covered his face, pretending that he hadn't cursed him. Then he noticed that the girl from the Eugean sect also turned out to be surprisingly strong. Suddenly the cultivator's expression changed as he realized something. At the same time, Wulingan buried one of the robots in the ground. He quickly decided that he wouldn't be hit this way. The tester then shouted furiously that the test was about speed and shouldn't be misinterpreted. The examiner threatened to fail him if he broke any more dolls, but he only apologized. With that said, young Bei finally remembered his father's advice. Suddenly, Instructor Mei grabbed the device and told the boy not to waste words. Then, she pressed the buttons herself so that Yufu could feel the full power of the dolls. The parts of the robots began to separate and merge in the middle of the room. In an instant, they all merged into one giant robot, surprising the lone cultivator. Soon, Chigenjai explained that the power of the fusion exceeded the level of the golden core and questioned the difficulty of the exam. He also warned that the doll's weapons were encoded with a deadly poison. With arrows in his back, the young man only said that he felt dizzy, while the other scolded him. The examiner claimed that such a thing could kill someone, but Instructor Mai didn't care. Smiling, she asked if they really wanted that arrogant boy to pass the exam. Jättiläisnukke ampui sitten käsistään sarjan myrkkyneuloja. Puingan väisti kaikki ammukset vaivattomasti nopealla liikkeellä. Väistettyään hän pysähtyi ja katsoi taakseen aivan kuin olisi tajunnut jotain. Katsottuaan uudelleen hän huomasi, että hyökkäykset olivat osuneet muihin ehdokkaisiin, ja hän pyysi anteeksi. Ärtyneenä ohjaaja Mei päätti lähettää lisää nukkeja peränsä ohjauslaitteen avulla. Hetkessä nuori mies huomasi olevansa täysin jättiläisrobottien ympäröimä. Energian aura muodostui hänen ympärilleen ja hän valmistautui yhteenottoon. Ohjaajat varoittivat häntä kaukaa, että hänet hylättäisiin, jos hän vahingoittaisi enempää nukkeja. Hän lysähti maahan. TMG lupasi polttaa suitsukkeita hänen puolestaan, kun muut huomasivat vaaran vähentyneen. Eujan lahkon tyttö vain tarkkaili, ajatellen, että tämä johtui halusta esitellä itseään. Ympäröityneenäkin nuori mies pysyi paikallaan tuijottaen robotteja. Tämän tajuttuaan hän päätti, että se oli ainoa tapa ratkaista tilanne. Sitten hän koukisti polvensa ja keräsi voimaa jalkoihinsa. Voimakkaalla loikalla hän syöksyi kohti jättiläisnukkea ja osui siihen murskaavalla iskulla. The instructor stared in shock, unable to believe he had managed to fly while the puppet was destroyed. The other students wondered what his level was since flying with swords required the golden core stage. Fallen on the ground, T&I explained that he was not using spiritual aura to fly. In fact, he was only using the strength of his own legs to jump. The other candidates watched in disbelief at the power of his body while TNG suggested he take a break. Instructor Mei, however, knew he could not stay in the air for long and prepared to attack. Immediately, several spears were aimed at the exact spot where he would land. Unable to destroy the puppets and risking losing points, the young man needed to think of a solution. Seeing the Eugene sect cultivator dodging the attacks, he seemed to have found the answer he was looking for. With that, he landed precisely on the tips of the spears on the ground. In an instant, the young man stopped right in front of the girl. Right after, he knelt before her. With a smile, he asked what she would do next. The sudden approach left her stunned, wondering if this was the pervert her father had warned her about. In a swift move, the boy hid behind her while the swordswoman defended herself. Thus, he continued using her body as a shield against the attacks. Irritated, the cultivator shouted for him to stop, but he only apologized, saying it was the only way out he had found. Without hesitation, the young girl tried to strike him with her blade. With that, she decided she would knock him down first before anything else. Attacked by projectiles and by his partner at the same time, the young man cried out for help when he realized he was in trouble. Collapsed on the floor, Tien gave a thumbs up, impressed with Lingen's skill in dodging blows. From afar, Instructor Mei laughed while controlling the attacks, wondering how the two would escape. With that, the cultivator looked at the instructors and noticed that the incense stick was almost burned out. In an instant, an idea came to his mind as he observed the examiner. He then stopped running and turned to face Bad as the arrows flew toward him. Right after, he filled his lungs with a deep breath. The instructors watched the scene, unsure if he was preparing to die. As he exhaled, a massive gust of wind created a vortex that pushed everyone back. The force of the blast dragged the other candidates across the arena floor. Even so, Instructor Mai held the controller tightly, believing it was nothing more than a bluff. The wind was so strong it even lifted their hair. The examiner warned him not to think he would pass the test, but the young man asked to pause for a moment. With that, he pointed out that the test's incense stick had already burned out completely. Examiner Hang realized that the breath had accelerated the burning and wondered what was wrong with the boy's body. She then shouted that Chief Lingan actually had a deeper purpose behind his action. With that, the gust tore the clothes of several candidates while he explained that the chief was trying to gain benefits for everyone. The swordswoman's face turned completely red at the situation. Right after, the disciple of the Eugene sect ran off, warning that it would not end there. While the young man wondered what he had done wrong, he then looked at the other participants who were wounded and bleeding. A voice in the background commented that it had been many years since such an interesting freshman had appeared. Suddenly, the headmaster of Suanin Academy, Yutang Singh, appeared, praising that year's lively and vibrant evaluation. Thus the students wondered if that was really a headmaster, commenting that he didn't look trustworthy with his wig falling off. Then TNG scolded them, revealing that this was the legendary Red Flame, Shura Utang. He went on to tell the story of how the leader had massacred countless demonic cultivators and dyed his hair with their blood. Even so, the other candidates did not seem very impressed with the tale. One of them then questioned why his red hair was fake if the legend was true. The headmaster turned to the boy and asked what his name was, and he replied that it was Wu Lingen. From atop a roof, Xia Yu observed the scene. Worried, the young girl wondered why the headmaster had appeared so suddenly and how she would fix the fact that Lingan had offended him. With that, she contacted him mentally, and the boy heard her call. She then instructed him to put the wig back on the leader's head before he noticed. Instructor might try to apologize on behalf of the boy, begging for leniency from his superior. The headmaster, however, retorted, questioning the instructor's own lack of skill. Meanwhile, the wig continued to slip from the Ehlers' head. In an instant, the young man prepared to act. With a quick movement, he leaped up and placed the wig back onto the headmaster's head. The elder was impressed with the speed of the move, which almost went unnoticed. Smiling, the cultivator said he had only picked up something the headmaster had dropped, and that no thanks were necessary. Instructor might try to get used attention to warn him. Suddenly, the headmaster appeared with several darts stuck in his head. From the roof, Xiao shouted desperately, telling him to differentiate between the wig and hidden weapons. Instructor Mi grabbed the boy by the neck, accusing him of attacking the elder, but he apologized, saying he had made a mistake. The leader, however, questioned whether they really thought such small things could harm him. Instructor Mai pointed at the blood dripping down, but the superior insisted that it was part of the test. The boy seemed impressed, but Choyu realized the headmaster was only pretending to be brave. Then the young man offered to remove the weapon stuck in his head. As soon as the dart was pulled out, a black liquid spurted from the wound. The leader then collapsed to the ground, revealing that his legs were hairy. Instructor Meg ran and caught him before he hit the floor. The other students commented that he seemed just like an arrogant old man, and that he had hairy legs. Examiner Huan then announced that all the remaining students had passed the second phase and that the next test would be held the following day. As the instructors carried the headmaster toward the alchemy hall, the others only watched the scene. One of the candidates remarked that although they had passed the evaluation, something felt strange. Suddenly, one of them remembered something important, as he found himself surrounded by puppets. Everyone shouted at once, asking Master Hang why he hadn't deactivated the mechanical puppets. From a distance, Instructor May observed the chaos in the courtyard while Lincoln remained safe. Hidden, Instructor Xiao Chanhua thought to himself that he had not expected the boy to hand himself over so easily. Later, the students lamented that they had almost been killed by projectiles during the test. Thus, the scene shifted to the student dormitories at night. There, Xiao Yu found him training and asked why he wasn't resting, but the boy said he needed to pass the test. She then agreed that the next evaluation was crucial for obtaining more training resources. Even so, the young girl reminded him that balancing work and rest was also important. With that, she offered to help him unlock his meridians, but her expression made him suspicious. The girl only praised him for being ambitious and moved closer to him. Suddenly, she tripped on a stone near the door. With a swift motion, the cultivator caught her and told her to be careful. To herself, Xiao celebrated that her plan had worked perfectly. Outside, Ba remained standing near a wall. With that, she promised herself that she would make Wu Lingen pay for what had happened. Suddenly, a noise startled her. Immediately, she turned toward the sound which came from his room. Her expression changed as she tried to understand the scene. Through the window, the girl saw the silhouette of Wingan and wondered what he was doing there. Thus, she tried to convince herself it was a mistake since the boy had barely even arrived at the academy. With that, she decided to calm down so she could observe the scene more clearly. Looking again, the silhouette the window seemed to confirm her suspicions. In reality, he was only training with his jump rope, which fortunately his uncles had found. Meanwhile, Xiao regretted spilling the red flower wine used to treat injuries. She then crouched down with a cloth to start cleaning the puddle on the floor. As she stepped on the liquid, the young girl slipped and suddenly fell. Outside, Bidet prepared to break into the room, determined to save the girl. Suddenly, a frightening silhouette appeared in the window, making her scream in terror. She quickly covered her face, believing it was already too late to do anything. Inside the room, the cultivator asked Shuyu if she was all right, but she only said she had fallen. With that, she lamented that her clothes had been stained with a red liquid. The scene left him flustered, making him avert his eyes. He then offered to help her find clean clothes and turned toward the wardrobe. Suddenly, the door to the room was kicked open with great force. Sword in hand, Bai called him a demonic murderer and ordered him to surrender. At that moment, the scene showed the young man handing a towel to Xiaoyu, who was kneeling on the floor. Upon entering, the girl accused him of defiling the body, while the other wondered how she had become a corpse. The youth could not understand why he was being called a demonic murderer. He then questioned if she had discovered his identity, but the answer was denied immediately. Even with his attempted explanation, Bid refused to listen and prepared to strike. She quickly activated her sword technique and an aura of energy formed around her. The young woman then launched her 10,000 swords attack. With no other option, he decided he would need to offend her in order to defend himself. With that, he moved at a high speed, dodging the blades of energy. The swiftness of his movement left him surprised for an instant. Biden warned him not to think that was all she had. She then prepared her piercing celestial sword strike. A massive beam of energy was fired in his direction. To defend himself, he countered the attack with a direct punch. His opponent could not believe he had shattered her sword using only his body. Suddenly, she felt a presence appear right behind her. In an instant, she was struck at the back of the neck with a palm strike meant to erase her memory. With that, she collapsed to the ground, completely unconscious as her sword rolled aside. Sitting on the floor, the cultivator apologized, explaining that this was the only option to avoid revealing his identity. Thus, the technique consisted of infusing power into the palm and directing it to the opponent's brain. As a result, the strike left her completely stunned on the ground. Soon after, he said they needed to take her back quickly before anyone found them there. He then carried the girl on his shoulders out of the room. Under the moonlight, he ran across the rooftops of the academy with her. As he advanced, he searched for the right place where he should have left her. Suddenly, the sword's wound began to wake up, wondering what was wrong with her. Without hesitation, he struck her again with the same technique to erase her memory. With a sigh, he thought that he had nearly been exposed. Even so, something continued to trouble him. As he carried her through the academy streets, he wondered where that woman actually lived. Because of that, the situation left him completely lost, not knowing what to do next. Hidden, she observed the scene, trying to understand what kind of relationship existed between Chief Lingen and Bid. Although he pushed open the door of one of the rooms, he soon opened it fully. After that, the young man laid her down on the bed. Since the room looked unoccupied, he assumed she was staying there. But suddenly the young woman began to wake up, questioning what was happening. However, without hesitation, he struck her again with the memory-erasing technique. As she fainted, the stranger apologized for not being able to reveal his identity. Vasco began to worry whether repeated use of the technique might have scrambled her memories. Even though he felt guilty, he knew it was better than having his family exterminated. Looking around, he was surprised by the mess in the young woman's room. Soon after, he noticed the footprints he had left on the floor. Therefore, determined not to leave any trace, he grabbed and mopped to clean the place. In addition, while cleaning, he decided he might as well tidy up the mess in her room. But then, the scene shifted to a gazebo in the middle of a forest at night. At that moment, a hooded figure ordered whoever was hiding there to stop. As soon as young Xiao Chano emerged, the stranger praised him for being so well hidden. Right after, the figure boasted that nothing could escape his eyes. With that, the young man explained that he needed his help to deal with a new student. The hooded man, however, questioned why he should help him. In return, the instructor promised his full support in the choice of the next family head. Soon after, the figure stood and asked for the target's identity, and a request was answered. Woolingen. Hearing the name, the man recalled the arrogant boy from the exam. Then the instructor proposed to rig the lottery so that he could kill the youth accidentally. The hooded one, however, agreed to the plan, but reminded him not to forget his promise. As the figure turned to leave, young Master Xiao called him back. Shortly after, he asked for help with another matter. for in the water a giant aquatic serpent had coiled around his leg, holding him fast. Desperate, he begged to be saved first, which left his ally incredulous at the situation. With no other choice, the man decided to intervene. With a swift movement, he drew his weapon and slashed the creature with an energy strike. Soon after, he ran and leaped, finishing the attack with a powerful slash. Thus, with the beast defeated, the hooded figure announced that it was over. But suddenly, Xiao Chanhu fell from the sky, screaming among the trees. In an instant, the man caught him in his arms before he hit the ground. At last, the instructor praised the strength of the Xiao family's genius, but the young man only asked him to get off. With that, the figure dropped him headfirst into the water and walked away. Soon after, the spirit of Master Dan appeared, and the hooded one warned that wooing was not so simple. Then the master agreed, admitting that the power the boy had shown would be difficult even for him at his peak. Even so, the man boasted, claiming that no one in that world could defeat him. He then revealed himself to be a time traveler named Xiao Huoho. 4. In his original life, he was just an ordinary student on Blue Star. After a traffic accident, he ended up transmigrating into the cultivation world. Soon after, he became an apparently insignificant young master of a Xiao family. One day, while attending cattle, he stumbled and fell into manor. At that instant, he found the ring that housed Master Dan, beginning his journey of power. With his protagonist's story, he felt confident that every opponent was nothing but a stepping stone on his path. Moreover, Huo declared that even without resentment, Wingan's destiny was to be defeated by him. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the young man suddenly sneezed, not understanding why. After finishing his cleaning, he decided the room was tiddy enough and that it was time to leave. With that, he opened the wooden door. After saying his farewell, he left while Bid continued sleeping. Standing before his own room, the traveler noticed something strange. As soon as he entered, he realized someone had been in his room. Soon after, he found Ba lying unconscious in his bed. For a moment, he only stood there watching the sleeping girl. But in an instant, he panicked upon realizing that a cultivator had broken into his room. As he approached the bed, Shohumu watched Ba turn over in her sleep. Soon the young woman's fame as the goddess of the new generation came to his mind, and he admired her even while she was asleep. Then the young man scolded himself, reminding himself that this was not the time for distractions. With a new posture, he turned toward one of the pieces of furniture in the room. Thus he began to analyze the situation, pondering why a girl would be tidying his room and lying in his bed. Therefore, a single conclusion emerged in his mind. She must certainly like him. The memory of comic books from his past life made him believe that as the protagonist, it was his destiny to have a heroine in love with him. As he looked at the sleeping girl, he questioned whether Bid could be his destined heroine. Soon after, his expression changed as he noticed that despite everything, the girl still had not awakened. At that moment, Master Dan appeared and revealed that her consciousness was damaged, which was preventing her from waking. Thus Shuohu assumed that Ba had spent so much energy cleaning his room that she fainted, leading Master Dan to scold him. Unbothered, the young man leaned over the bed, confident he could help using the first aid knowledge from his past life. He then positioned himself in front of the bed and prepared to begin the procedure. At that instant, the girl lying there let out a faint murmur. Slowly her eyes opened and she questioned what was happening to her body. At that very moment, the young master leaned over her with his lips ready for a kiss. Suddenly, a loud crash made Wu Linggan turn back, startled by the noise coming from the room. Immediately after, Batty kicked open the door as she left, warning him never to appear in front of her again. Sitting on the floor, Xiao Huov wondered why he had been attacked if she had feelings for him, leading Master Dan to suggest he might be overthinking things. Thus, the young man concluded that the women of this world were naturally reserved and that a kiss had been far too direct. Master Dan then asked how he could be so sure that Ba liked him and had not simply entered the wrong room by mistake. With a bruised face, the protagonist answered that the reason was simple. He was a natural-born protagonist. Outside, the young woman walked alone through the courtyard as she tried to understand how she had ended up in someone else's bed. With that, a memory surfaced in her mind, showing the moment she confronted Wu Linggan and heard the accusation that he was a demonic cultivator. Little by little, a memory became clearer, and she finally began to understand what had happened. In her recollection, she accused Wingan of being a cultivator who used bodies to strengthen his cultivation. Therefore, Bid realized that she had uncovered a huge secret and that the person in the room was probably Wingan's accomplice. With a determined smile, she swore that she would find proof that a thief had infiltrated Zuenin Academy. At that instant, her voice echoed through the night, shouting Wingan's name as a promise of vengeance. The cry woke two students who recognized Bid's voice and wondered what could have happened between her and Wingan. The next day on the presentation stage, all the students were already gathered for the evaluation. While they waited, some began to complain that the evaluation had not yet started and that no instructor had appeared. Far away, Wulingan continued his intense training, determined to push himself even harder. As soon as Chusheng Shouyu tried to calm him about the test, he replied that he could not afford to relax. Amid the crowd, Ba watched the scene and criticized Wulingan for still showing off. Other students noticed her reaction, remembering that Bei had shouted Wingan's name the night before, and questioned what had happened. With a smile, Qi approached and hinted that none of them knew the true story behind the event. Shortly after, he began to explain that the relationship between the two is deeper, preparing to tell what he had seen the previous night before he could continue. However, a blade was pressed against his neck, cutting off the gossip. Immediately after, Shu appeared from behind and threatened him not to slander Bid, making the boy agree at once. With the warning given, he walked away, leaving Chung collapsed on the ground. The crowd commented on the sudden reaction, assuming he was just a great admirer of Bid. Ignoring the comments, Xiao Huohu reinforced himself that she was his destined heroine, while Master Dan only watched his confidence. Suddenly, an authoritative shout demanding silence echoed throughout the presentation area. With M. Ranging's arrival, all the students, including Wulingan, turned toward the stage. Soon after, the instructors Meng Yanli, Yu Tangsing, and Honglu Hong stepped onto the stage, and the third evaluation was announced. M. Yanli explained that this round would be a real combat test, where performance would determine to which class each student would be assigned. After that, he informed them that Headmaster Yuch Hansing would personally evaluate the entire process. Next to Wulingan, Chusheng Xiaoyu commented that the headmaster seemed to have changed his wig, but she was quickly scolded to stay quiet. The headmaster seemed to notice the whisper, but only confirmed that he understood the instructions. Then, one of the instructors pressed a button and announced that the third round would be a combat test in which the candidates would draw their numbers. With that, the students lined up in front of a penguin-shaped machine to get their numbers. Wulingan watched the others approach while waiting for his turn in line. When his moment came, he placed his hand inside the machine's opening to retrieve a number. Seeing the perfect chance, Mei Yanli took the opportunity to launch a piece of metal with paper toward the boy. Not understanding what had just happened, he looked down at his hand. In his palm, the paper with the number 38 was torn and stuck to a sharp piece of metal. From a distance, Mayani observed the scene with a satisfied smile. Shortly after, he turned to Xia Huoho and confirmed that he had managed to make the target pick the manipulated number. The instructor boasted of his skill but was interrupted by a bloody cough, and the hunted youth advised him to stop talking. Then Shou Huovo showed his own number of 36 and questioned whether the plan had failed since he was not in the same group as the boy. With an air of superiority, the hooded one replied that he had not understood the true strategy. Maggie explained that Wulingan seemed to have some cultivation technique, so he preferred to put someone else to test his abilities first. At that moment, the young man noticed a great shadow approaching and turned to face his opponent. A giant man with the number 37 appeared before him and advised him to give up, calling him weak. In the crowd, Tanji and other students were surprised by Lingan's first opponent, commenting that he did not seem to be someone easy to face. Stone Chi revealed that the adversary was Wang Tishu, a notorious assassin known for never leaving witnesses. Standing before Wing, the man revealed that he had observed his two previous evaluations. With disdain, he labeled him as trash, relying only on a bit of natural strength. Wang Tishu then boasted of being at the peak of key refinement and slapped the boy across the face, provoking Tusen Choi's fury. While trying to calm his friend, Wing and silently faced his opponent. Seeing the reaction, Wang Tishu mocked him, asking if he wanted to start fighting right there. Amid the tension, the crowd stirred, expecting the newcomer to finally react to the provocation. To everyone's surprise, he simply apologized, stating that his spiritual root was too poor, while those around him fell to the ground in disbelief. Tushan Xiaoyu scolded him for being so polite to an opponent, but he simply replied that what was said was true. Thus, Wang Tiu stepped closer and ordered him to kneel if he wanted his life spared. Wulingan stared at him in silence for a moment, before he began to speak. At that instant, he declared that even if weak, he had reasons that compelled him to keep fighting. The assassin then warned him to prepare for defeat in the arena and turned to leave. As he walked away, Tu Shangxiao praised Wu Linggan's attitude, though he looked back at her confused. Far away, Wang Tishu pressed Mag Yanli for the deal to enter the superior class if he killed the boy. Smiling, the assassin walked away, promising to make the newcomer understand his true power. Mag Yanli only commented that he hoped Wu Linggan would not be eliminated in the very first round. Soon after, Mag Rinning announced the end of the lottery and summoned the freshmen of the first match to the arena. The first to be announced was number 1 by D to the delight of the audience. Next, number 2. Zhengma entered the arena and immediately proposed dual cultivation, irritating the crowd as everyone threw objects at him. Jiang Mi dodged confidently, warning that attacks from behind did not work on him. Moments later, he was struck squarely on the head, completely shattering his composure. The food was deflected but ended up hitting instructor Mai Rengxing, leaving him covered in it while Jiang Ma apologized. From a distance, Shou and Mei Yanli simply watched the chaos unfold in the arena. With a serious look, a hooded youth declared he would remember Jiang's name for coveting the woman who was his. Mei Yanli questioned how he had gotten close to her so quickly, to which the mysterious young man replied that it was the effect of his protagonist's aura. To end the commotion, Headmaster UX coughed and ordered the match to begin immediately. Thus the instructor released Yong Ma, still covered in the remains of food from the crowd. Standing on the opposite side of the arena, Bit only commented that this was exactly what she wanted. Therefore, John May declared that he would show his true abilities to finally win her over. Then, he prepared to execute one of his most powerful techniques. Using the shadow clone, he created multiple copies of himself that spread throughout the arena. Shinji explained that the technique created clones with swift movements, but Wingan did not seem impressed. Surrounding his opponent, the clones taunted her, saying she would never defeat him without finding the real body. Bid only observed in silence for a moment, and suddenly all the clones vanished, leaving only John's legs in the middle of the arena. With a quick move, the young woman landed a precise kick on her opponent, who asked if she thought he was an idiot. At that instant, he writhed in pain and accused her of using a despicable and lowly strike. Smiling, the young man began to reveal that not everything was as it seemed. Soon after, Yong displayed a protective metal plate, explaining that since he had harassed others before, he was already prepared for that kind of attack. Saying that his kindness had been rejected, he decided he would no longer be merciful, and began gathering energy in his hands. As soon as the sphere of energy was launched toward Ba, he had to dodge her rapid clone attacks. In the crowd, Wu Linggan questioned why he had not fired the Kai sphere directly to strike. With that, Qi and Jai explained that a cultivator's level determined the distance and power of clay, and that merely condensing it was already an impressive feat. Hearing the explanation, Ling reflected on how strong his father and Tu Shangxiao really were. In the arena, Bi managed to dodge all the blows and asked if that was all he had to show. In the arena, Ba managed to dodge all the blows and asked if that was all he had to show. With a wave of his hand, Jiang'em declared that this farce should end. Warning her not to underestimate him, he prepared to redirect the attack against her. Quickly, he leaped back to gain some distance. With a victorious smile, he boasted of his control of the Kaya sphere. At last, he proclaimed that his ability surpassed her imagination and launched the attack directly. With her agility, she managed to dodge his attack. The cultivator composed herself and began to evade the energy spheres with swift movements. The instructors commented on the Hewan sect's unique ability to manipulate spiritual energy released outside the body. One of the students explained to Wu Engan that the technique used threads of energy to control larger attacks, leaving him impressed. Back in the arena, Baggy faced the approaching energy sphere with a determined gaze. Then she drew her sword, irritated at being forced to use it against such a despicable opponent. With a single motion, she declared a disgrace and cut the energy sphere in half. The impact of the slash surged forward in a straight line and struck her opponent directly. Suddenly, Jung's protective metal plate shattered, leaving him completely shocked. Moments later, he fell to his knees, impressed that she had destroyed his attack and even more convinced that she was the right woman for him. With the impact, the young man fainted and collapsed to the arena floor defeated. Wingan observed the scene, confused about how the energy was being controlled. Instructor Mei Renning then announced that Yang Ma had lost his ability to fight and declared Bei the winner. As the crowd celebrated the victory of Yujian Peak, The swordswoman remained still at the center of the arena. Beside Tu Shangxiao, the young man reflected on whether this was what battles between cultivators were truly like. Suddenly, a girl appeared holding an enormous chicken leg. Hearing the noise, Lingan turned to see what had happened. The pink-haired girl then recognized Bid, expressing her admiration for the #1 cultivator of the new generation. Soon after, she commented that she also wished to be that strong one day. The newcomer approached Wu Lingan, who was surprised by her height. Without meaning to, she bumped into Tu Xiangxiu, who was shocked by the impact. At that instant, the fox assumed that this was the kind of thing Lingan liked. The pink-haired girl noticed the boy's gaze and deduced that he was craving food. Seeing everyone's reaction, she offered the meat and asked if he wasn't desiring something else. Though scolding himself, Wu Lingan admitted he was hungry from training and accepted the piece of meat. Tang Qiu panicked, not knowing what to do as she realized he really did want the food. Thus, she could not believe that a stranger had understood Lingan's desires better than she had. Meanwhile, the instructor ordered that Yonga be removed from the arena so the next candidates could prepare. With his mouth full, Wu Lingan asked the name of the girl who had fed him. Smiling, she introduced herself as Chan, a student who had entered the academy the previous year. Tang Xiao questioned her about being a senior, but the young woman replied it wasn't exactly like that while hiding behind the meat. Soon after, Muron Chan explained that she had actually repeated due to low grades and had come to take the placement exam. While eating, she revealed that she could be expelled if her results were poor, making Wu Lingan notice that she didn't seem very nervous about it. Shortly after, TNG approached to share information they might not know. He revealed that the senior Morang came from a famous family of alchemists revered across the 9 provinces. Consequently, he explained that she had developed a technique that turned alchemical ingredients into food without losing their effects. Hearing this, Wingan realized that the meat he had just eaten was actually a spiritual pill. At that moment, he felt embarrassed for having consumed something so valuable. But Morang-chan reassured him. She explained that she simply could not stand to see someone hungry. Her kindness left Wingan and Tushin Shoyu speechless. Moved, he called her an angel, while the fox at his side grumbled that it wasn't that big of a deal. Suddenly, a crowd of admirers ran past them, making way for the young master. At that moment, Badi approached with a focused gaze, ignoring the commotion around her. Without hesitation, Morang-chan ran to her and with admiration asked for an autograph. While she waited eagerly, Bid only stared at her coldly, leaving Wingan and his guardian in silence. The #1 refused request, but advised her to be careful when choosing her friends. She then turned to Wingan and promised she would uncover the truth about what he had done the night before. As she walked away, the crowd began to speculate whether what Qi and Jai had said about their relationship was true. Because of this, Morang-chan asked if he was really close to Ba, but the boy replied that he only knew her. Ignoring he answered, she held his hand and asked him to introduce them as she wanted to become as strong as the senior. Suddenly, Instructor Mag Rangjing's voice echoed, calling Morang-chan's name twice. From the stage, he scolded her for not listening and told her in hurry to the match. As she ran, the girl asked Wu Lingan not to forget to deliver her message, and he agreed to try. With that, Tu Shangxiu advised him to stay away from her, but he replied that he thought she was a good person. He then reflected that someone who cared so much about a stranger could not be a bad person. On stage, the instructor reminded her that this was her last chance to retake the exam. The girl then took a deep breath to prepare for the fight. With a determined look, she told herself she needed to win at least one battle in order to stay. Then, the thought of having to return to a dark place terrified her. The instructor then announced the next match and called number 36 to step onto the stage. In response to the call, a hooded figure began walking toward the presentation platform. Morel and Chan watched her opponent approach, and her expression shifted to complete surprise. As he lowered the hood, Sho Huovo revealed his face with a smile and announced that he was coming. With both sides in position, the instructor prepared to start the match. Meanwhile, the two opponents stared at each other with serious expressions, ready for battle. In the upper seats, Yu Tangying and Huang Lu Hong questioned how the young woman of a Morang family ended up in the freshman test. Soon, the stern young man explained that she had failed almost all evaluations, even the alchemy test, and would probably have to repeat the year. With that, both concluded that if the senior did not win any matches, they might have to send her back to her family. Then she commented to Wu Lingan that although she could prepare powerful medicinal foods, the girl had no combat skills. In the center of the arena, the instructor once again positioned himself to give the signal. Then with a backward leap he announced that the match had begun. With clenched fists, the meringue heiress pulled herself she could not afford to lose no matter what. On the other hand, her opponent commented that he had not expected to fight such a cute girl. Right after the young man imagined he would win easily with his vast experience. Even more confident, he fantasized that after the fight, both she and Bid would be impressed by his strength and join his harem. At that moment, the girl charged with a shout and threw a straight punch. Her fist struck the young man's face squarely, catching him off guard. With the impact, he was thrown backward while his opponent gave him no respite, moving in for another attack. Then Wu Ying questioned why that idea was just standing there smiling while Tushang Shuyu suggested he must be thinking of something happy. Inside his mind, Master Dan scolded him for daydreaming, but the fighter insisted he would win because he was the protagonist. Back in the fight, Senior Meringue charged and threw another straight punch at her rival's face. At the last second, he managed to grab her fist, halting the attack. With the blow blocked, the young man warned that the same move would not work on him a second time. Right after, he threw her over his shoulder, launching her to the other side of the arena. The young woman landed hard on the ground as her opponent began to rise for his next move. Even so, with her guard raised, she prepared to charge again. With that, the young man used his speed, claiming that ordinary hand-to-hand combat would never reach him. In the audience, Wingan shouted words of encouragement to the senior to Tu Shandu's dismay. Panting, the young woman seemed to be running out of energy to continue the fight. Even so, refusing to lose, she pulled out 2 enormous meat legs, determined not to give up. To her rival's surprise, the girl began devouring the food right there in the middle of the arena. Then Qianjai explained that the fighter was using spiritual food to increase her combat power, making Mu Lingan realize it wasn't hunger. Soon after, he revealed that the food was actually real pills, and that eating so much at once could have serious consequences. Suddenly, the accumulated energy exploded in a bright light that blinded the young man for an instant. Immediately after, the meringue heiress appeared with her clothes torn, but surrounded by an aura of power. In the audience, Wu Lingan and Tu Shanchao wondered if what they saw was an explosion of her body or just of her clothes. With a nosebleed, the young man let out a mocking laugh. He then declared that even with a last-minute effort, the senior would not be able to defeat him, only to be scolded to wipe his nose first. Ignoring a remark, the girl replied that she had to try, even if it seemed impossible. With a shout, she charged at her opponent, breaking the arena floor as she advanced. The attack surged toward the fighter who prepared for the impact. While Master Dan warned him that her strength had surpassed the key refinement stage, he replied that he already knew. Then the combatant declared that the fight was not over yet and prepared to strike again. With that, the young man announced that he would also begin fighting seriously. Her fist then clashed against the sword he used to defend himself. The strength of the impact surprised him, leaving him stunned for a moment. Then the punch shattered his guard and struck him directly. Willigan was impressed by the senior's power, but Tushan Shaolyu noticed that she was only forcing her body to its limit. Soon after, the observer explained that with that level of intensity, the young woman would not last more than a few minutes. In the middle of the ruin arena, the heiress breathed heavily, already exhausted from the battle. With sweat dripping down her face, she wondered aloud if she had managed to win. On the observation platform, the instructor asked if the young man had been beaten to death, but Headmaster Yu Henging reassured him. With a serious gaze, the headmaster affirmed that the battle was not over yet. Amid the smoke, the silhouette of a sword appeared, and the opponent was surprised that he had been pushed to his limit by a local girl. With a battered face, he stood up and decided it was time to show his true strength. With his sword on his shoulder, the young man declared that he needed to show his true strength. Then, with his wounded face, he warned that this time he would not hold back. With that, the fighter charged forward swiftly, promising not to go easy on his opponent. The meringue heiress was startled by his speed as he moved in circles around her. As the fighter leaped above the arena, Wingan shouted for her to look up, making her react. Soon an attack from above struck the ground with force, shattering the arena floor. Just in time, the girl managed to leap backward and avoid the blow. With a blue energy lotus blooming in his hand, the rival declared that she would not be able to escape. Then he launched the technique Blue Heartfire Lotus directly at the young woman. The energy erupted into blue flames engulfing the combatant and destroying part of the arena. In the stands, Wingan and Tan Xiaoyu watched the scene in silence, unable to react. Amid the flames, the girl screamed as her clothes were burned away by the energy. At once, Tuan Shoyu covered Wingan's eyes so he would not see. While the audience reacted to the strike, the instructors recognized the blue lotus flame and concluded that the match already seemed decided. Standing in the smoke, the young man glared at his opponent and asked what was wrong. With a smile, the fighter mocked whether she still refused to surrender while the girl stared back at him with determination. Without replying, the Harris pulled out a bottle and drank its contents in one go. At once, a fiery aura exploded around her as the bottle shattered on the ground. The unexpected reaction left the young man completely shocked. Then the combatant charged forward with a shout, releasing a wave of energy that sent Deborah's flying. The young woman unleashed a flurry of rapid punches against his sword, forcing him to struggle to block them. Watching the scene, one of the instructors questioned whether the girl had gone mad. Moments later, Wingen wondered if her aura had intensified due to a breakthrough, but Tan Xiao denied the possibility. The fox then explained that the senior was pushing her limits with even more pills. With that, Tan Xiaoyu concluded that at that moment the girl was literally burning her own life force. Even injured, the fighter continued her assault, shouting over and over that she could not lose. Seeing her stubbornness, the young man warned that he would no longer hold back. With a new move, he trapped her inside a giant blue lotus, which exploded and sent her flying. As soon as she landed, the fighter prepared to finish the battle. Seeing the danger, Instructor Mad Ranging shouted for the match to be stopped immediately. Ignoring the warning, the young man unleashed his blue lotus whirlwind attack upon the Harris. The instructor shouted again to stop the match, declaring it already over. With a look of panic, Mei Renning realized it was too late to intervene. Lying on the ground, the girl wondered if it truly was the end for her. Soon a memory surfaced, showing a relative destroying her food and scolding her for disgracing the family with useless recipes. In her recollection, the young woman asked why the Meringue family could not free themselves from the shackles of alchemy, since her food had the same effect as pills. The only answer she received was a slap, as she was told that cooking was a disgrace to the family name. With that, her relatives decided to send her to Zhuang Academy, planning to arrange a marriage for her if she failed. Then one of the family members expelled her, calling her useless and a disgrace to the clan. The memory ended with the girl collapsed on the ground, crying as she clenched her fists. With a determined gaze, she swore to prove that the food she made was just as good as any pill. Back in the present, as energy enveloped her, the fighter wondered if anything could truly change. At the last second, the energy attack was halted before striking her. Suddenly, Wu Ying appeared in front of the girl, blocking the final blow. With a serious expression, he stared at the rival and declared that he could not allow her to be harmed because Semir Meringue was a good person. When asked if he was trying to stop him, the young man vowed that he would. The intent was to hurt her. With a smile, the fighter called him brave for daring to challenge him. Suddenly, Instructor Mag Renning leaped between the two and ordered everyone to leave the arena, declaring a match over. Then the examiner pointed to the wounded youth and declared him the winner of the battle. With a spin of his weapon, the young man prepared to leave the arena. Before leaving, he warned that the other must win his next match, or else he would not have the chance to face him personally. Not understanding the threat, Wing In replied that he would do his best to pass the first round. With that, Tu Shangshayu scolded him for being so calm in the face of a clear threat. But he did not understand what had happened. At that moment, the Harris began coughing, still weakened from the fight. As Wu Ying supported her and asked if she was all right, the young woman thanked him for saving her. With a sad expression, she lamented that she had not been able to win a single round, even after giving her all. Then the girl began crying in frustration. Suddenly, she vomited, and Wu Ling, in alarm, asked Tu Shangshaoyu to quickly fetch some healing pills. As he held her in his arms, he tried to comfort her, but the fighter insisted that she was fine. Soon after, she explained that she had simply eaten too much, making Tu Shangshao complain about the disgusting sight. With kindness, Wingen offered to help Senior Mong down to rest, and she thanked him. Before they could leave, Instructor Mag Renning interrupted and questioned where the boy thought he was going. Right after, he informed him that it was now his turn to fight in the arena. With that, the examiner revealed that his opponent was Wei Ying Tishu, who glared at him with a scornful smile. Wu Lingan then asked Tu Shang Xiaoyu to escort the Harris off stage, and the young woman wished him good luck. As she supported her, the fox grumbled at her thoughts about having to care for that foolish woman. Immediately, Mag Ranging ordered both sides to prepare for combat. In the arena, Wingan faced his opponent, who waited on the other side. With mockery, Wang Tehu declared that it seemed he had given up his last chance to survive. In response, the boy only stared back in silence, showing no reaction. With a leap, the instructor stepped back and officially announced the start of the match. Striking the ground with his weapon, the rival declared that if that was the case, he would have to kill him. In the audience, everyone worried about the fighter's power, but Tan Xiao reassured them, stating they did not know Lingan's strength. With complete confidence, she declared that no attack would be able to bring him down. In the arena, Wang Tishu only observed his enemy, readying himself for the final strike. Not understanding his opponent's posture, Wuling wondered what kind of move it was. Suddenly, Wang Tiu shouted and released a dark aura that tore his clothes from top to bottom. Then, a bright light exploded in front of Wingan, who observed the scene silently. His opponent appeared wearing pink undergarments and performed his iron pillar dance. The visual impact made the young man bleed instantly from the nose. In the stands, several spectators also collapsed backward, bleeding as well. Disgusted, TJI explained that the move caused such nausea that people could not remain standing. Instructor Huan Lu Hong commented that using such a visually aggressive strike was a disgrace to the academy. With that, Headmaster Yuan corrected him, affirming that the visual effect was only a distraction. He then asked if he had not noticed that something was wrong with everyone in the stands. Kneeling and clutching his stomach, Wingan felt nauseous and could barely stay upright. Seizing the chance, Wang Tu leaped with his weapon and shouted for him to die. The pillar struck the ground with force, raising a cloud of dust and debris. Even weakened, Wingan managed to leap away and dodge the strike. With a growl, Wang Tiju prepared to attack again, giving no chance to escape. With a spinning move, the rival executed his iron pillar whirlwind dance around Wu Lingen. In the audience, the spectators could no longer bear the scene, covering their eyes and vomiting from nausea. Beside Tu Shangxiao, the heiress suddenly seemed to understand what was happening. She then explained that the disgusting behavior was only a distraction for the true trick, the toxic smoke released by the iron pillar. With a victorious smile, Wang Tishu boasted that the entire arena was already filled with his poisonous fumes. Thus, feeling the effects of the poison, the young man covered his mouth, struggling to resist. Meanwhile, Tu Shangxiao accused him of being despicable for secretly using poison. In response, the assassin declared that in a life-and-death stage, all means were fair. From afar, Mei watched with satisfaction, praising the performance of the hired fighter. At his side, Shohumu commented that he almost fell for the trick, but the instructor corrected him, saying he indeed had. Soon after, Wang Tiju advanced with a shout and demanded that his opponent die in agony. However, paralyzed by the poison, the boy wondered what was happening as his body would not move, and his head throbbed with pain. Gradually, his expression shifted to panic as he realized the severity of the situation. Seeing his rival struggle, the assassin mocked him for still trying to fight without even using 10% of his strength. He then approached for the final blow, promising to end his suffering quickly. With that, the pillar struck the boy's face directly, forcing him back with injuries while the enemy watched him with disdain. Right after, he launched into the frenzied iron pillar dance, landing a brutal sequence of strikes. The barrage of blows pounded the body without pause, and the boy could only endure the impacts. In the stands, Meringue Chan shouted for him to stop fighting, while TNG worried about the imminent defeat. Desperate, the fox pleaded with the instructors to stop the match immediately. However, Magring replied that he could not stop the fight since the boy still had the ability to fight back. Despite the order, the relentless strikes continued to batter his body. From afar, Ba observed and questioned whether this was all the strength he had. Disappointed by what she saw, with his opponent already weakened, Wang Tiju prepared for the final strike. Soon after, the pillar hit its target directly, spraying blood across the arena. The scene shocked the entire audience, and even the assassin himself was surprised by the result. Even so, the young managed to catch the iron pillar with his hands, halting the attack. Not understanding, the enemy questioned why he was still resisting with the little strength he had left. Wounded, the boy explained that because he had so little energy, he needed to put everything he had into a single punch. With a contemptuous smile, the rival asked if he truly believed such a weak punch could hurt him. In that instant, the fist struck Wang Tishu's side. Immediately, his expression shifted to shock as he felt the impact. Suddenly, a wave of energy erupted from within his body, and he screamed as the damage spread. The force of the punch rippled through the arena in rings of energy, expanding from the point of impact. The explosion was so strong it could be seen from the stands, leaving all the spectators stunned. With his body battered, Wang Tishu glared at the young fighter, unable to believe what had happened. At last, with a final gasp, the assassin collapsed onto the arena floor, completely defeated. Standing covered in wounds, Wu Lingyan simply declared that he had won the fight. Lying on the ground, Wang To muttered that defeat was impossible. Then he questioned how his opponent had managed to defeat him so easily, even while poisoned. Wu Lingyan only turned away without giving a direct answer. With a serious gaze, the young man revealed that this was the power he possessed even in a weakened state. Not understanding, the defeated man called him a monster. Shocked by the revelation, soon instructor Mag Renning announced that the winner of the round was Wu Lingyan. With a discreet smile, the young man celebrated his victory. After that, the instructors decided to disperse the poisonous mist left in the arena. With this, Huang Luhong released a device that flew over the battlefield. The artifact spread an antidote that felt like rain, healing all those affected by the poison. As he felt the rain wooling and realized his strength had been restored. At that moment, Moran Chan ran toward him and congratulated him on his victory. With a hug, she praised him for being even more powerful than she had imagined. The scene stirred Tu Sheng Shuyu's fury, who advanced toward the two with a threatening look. While the young man was being embraced, the fox came closer and closer, ready to intervene. With a shout, Tang Xiao placed herself between them and warned Marang Chan not to get so close to Lingyan. The girl tried to justify herself, but the fox accused her of being interested in his body. From afar, Shou Huav complained that it should be him surrounded by beautiful girls, and Mei Yanli questioned why he felt that way. Soon, the instructor admitted that the winner's strength had indeed surpassed his expectations. Then Mei asked Xiao Huoho if he was certain he could handle that opponent. With an aura of confidence, the young man replied that the word lose did not exist in his dictionary. At that moment, Xiao Chunho appeared from behind and fined him 500 spirit stones for setting fire to the academy. Annoying, the young man questioned the penalty, but Mei Yanli restrained him so he would not act rashly. In a whisper, he warned that this man was the academy's disciplinarian and also the headmaster's uncle. Xiao Chanhu only observed the scene with a serious and intimidating expression. With that, Magli pointed out that the headmaster was watching the commotion from afar. Reluctantly, Xiao Huohu agreed to pay the fine and handed over a bag of spirit stones. Immediately, he received another punishment, this time of 1,000 stones for maliciously attacking an academy staff member. While Magli tried to calm him down, the young man shouted in rage but ended up agreeing to pay. As soon as the two left, he knelt on the ground and swore he would make the headmaster and an old man pay double for what they had done. Falling to the ground with his anger boiling, Xiaohuovo cast one last glance toward Wu Lingyan, as if blaming him for his frustrations as well. Suddenly, Wu Lingyan shivered, feeling a cold chill run down his spine. He muttered under his breath that the air had grown strange, leaving Tu Shen Xiaoyu intrigued. Soon after, Tianji congratulated him for defeating a 5-star assassin, but Wu Lingyan replied seriously that the fight had not been as simple as it looked. With a mischievous smile, the informant revealed that the battle had earned him valuable information about Wang Tishu, which he could sell for a good price on the black market. At that moment, instructor Mag Renen called TNG, reminding him that his participation in the first round was still pending. Surprised, the boy realized it was his turn to fight. With firm and cautious steps, he climbed onto the arena to face his opponent. On the other side, Yu Jiaxu waited silently, a young man with red hair and a calm gaze. In the upper seats, Headmaster Yu Hangsen confirmed to Huang Luhong that the boy was indeed his useless grandson. He then explained that since the youth refused to learn the family's techniques, he had no choice but to send him to the academy. In the stands, the revelation stirred murmurs among the students who commented on the competitor's identity. While Wu Lingyan's group showed concern, Qi remained calm and declared that his leader was underestimating him. With his book in hand, he stated that even without great combat skill, intelligence could compensate for the difference in strength. Facing Ujak Sui, he revealed that he already possessed much information about him since he was the headmaster's grandson. With confidence, he declared that by using the secret techniques of the Tanji sect, he would never fall without a fight. As soon as the instructor announced the start of the match, the two locked eyes intensely. Soon Shinji activated his divine technique, and a celestial eye opened on his forehead. Tu Shang X Xiaoyu surprise explained that it was a secret ability of the Tanji sect mastered by only a few capable of seeing the future. Observing Tanji's stance, she remarked that he had indeed saved a trump card for this moment. Meanwhile, Yujaxi prepared himself, curious to see the power of that technique. Focused began the Taiji deduction. The technique revealed that there was an 85% chance that Yujaxu would open the fight with an earth-based attack. Immediately after, Yujasui used the earth and rock surge, forcing Tanji to quickly leap aside to dodge. From afar, Yujaksu watched as the boy balanced himself atop one of the rocks. With a confident smile, Tianjai declared that he had already calculated that attack and thus would not be hit. Impressed with his precision, Wu Ling'an commented on the boy's movements, and Tu Shang Xiaoyu confirmed it was the effect of the technique. She explained that the celestial eye allowed Tangji to access the divine thoughts of the Tangji ancestor as if he were possessed. At that instant, a powerful aura appeared behind him, revealing the imposing image of an ancestral spirit. As the young warrior prepared for her attack, a red aura began to surround her hands. With that, Tianji's technique revealed that the chance of an earth-based attack combined with martial arts was 90%. Immediately after, the girl charged forward at high speed, using the shining trail technique to close in on her opponent. Without panicking, the boy simply raised his hand to the exact position indicated by his premonition. The moment the enemy's fist approached, he managed to block the strike with precision. Even with the block, the force of the impact landed squarely on his face. With the blow, the young visionary was thrown backward and fell unconscious onto the arena floor. While his opponent looked on, the boy remained on the ground completely defeated. From the stands, Wu Yingan and Tu Shang Xiaoyu shouted the student's name, shocked by the result. Even injured, the boy was already back on his feet, scribbling in his notebook about the need to calculate the difference in strength next time. Right after finishing his notes, he fainted again, leaving Wu Ling'an even more worried. At that moment, Instructor Mayren congratulated the young master on his victory, while Wu Ling'an wondered if his companion would be all right. In the upper seats, the headmaster remarked on the fighter's progress, but lamented that he still refused to use the Yu family techniques. After the fight, the victor looked toward the instructors in the sky and then turned to leave the arena. With that, Instructor Mag Renning authorized him to step down from the stage. Soon after, Wingan carried his colleague on his back, praising him for his strength and his third eye technique. With his face swollen, the boy replied that he didn't need to learn such things. But Wingan regretted having little talent for it. At that moment, Instructor Mei Ranking announced that the second round would be organized randomly and that the students called should step into the arena. In the upper seats, the headmaster and instructor Huang Luhong questioned the decision to select opponents at random. Elsewhere, Xiao Hu worried he might not get to face Wu Ling'an, but Mei Yanli reassured him with a smile. Finally, Instructor revealed that Wu Ling'an had offended more people than just the two of them. Immediately after, Mag Renson crushed a piece of paper in his hand and announced that the first match had been decided. Standing before the lottery machine, he opened the slips to reveal the competitors' names. Thus the fight would be between Wu Ling'an and Xiao Huho, who smiled confidently. However, Tu Shang Xiaoyu and Murang Chan questioned how this was possible if the selection was random. But Wu Ling'an said he hadn't heard anything about it. At once the instructor defended himself, asking how they could possibly manipulate the results to target new disciples. Soon after, Shou Huho stepped forward claiming he believed Instructor Mei would show no favoritism. Seeing his rival's hesitation, Tu Shang Xiaoyu accused him of being arrogant and afraid to fight. With a serious look, Wing interrupted her, declaring that enough had been said. He then stated that to enter a better class, he could not back down even a little. While Muran Chan and Tu Shang Xiaoyu admired their companion's resolute stance, the visionary took the chance to jot down the two girls' interest in his notes. With both opponents in position, the arena fell silent, awaiting the start of the combat. With a smile, Shou Huo remarked that he hadn't expected his rival to actually have the courage to step up and fight. He then charged forward, determined to settle both old and new grudges at once, striking the arena floor with his weapon. Moments later, Tu Shang Xiaoyu complained about the surprise attack, but Instructor Mei Ren pretended he had already announced the start of the match. Irritated, the fox concluded that everyone in the academy seemed to be targeting her brother. In the arena, the two fighters exchanged a series of high-speed blows. With a swift move, the aggressor created an after-image to confuse his opponent. As soon as a spectator shouted a warning, Wing was already turning toward the strike from behind. He then delivered a quick punch and Shou Huho admitted that the boy's speed was indeed impressive. Immediately afterward, a massive explosion of blue energy spread across the arena. Without retreating, the challenger used his own arm to block the advancing blue flames. With this, the opponent declared that he had already deciphered his fighting style and would not allow him to get close. Feeling the heat of the energy, Wu Ling'an blew on his own hand to cool it. Suddenly, the boy's expression changed as he realized something important. With the shout, Shou Huoho invoked the 3,000 Fire Dragons technique, summoning 2 massive creatures of blue flames. With that, the high temperature of the flames forced his opponent to retreat, as he realized he could not block the strike with his body. From afar, Mayani observed with satisfaction, encouraging the attack to corner his rival. Meanwhile, Bagi watched the fight, waiting for Wulingan to finally reveal his demonic techniques. Cornered at the edge of the arena, he saw his enemy preparing a new strike to finish him once and for all. Moments later, the technique twin dragons entering the sea surged toward Wulingan, who braced himself for the imminent impact. With a shout, Wulingan declared that he had no choice but to use his full strength. Meanwhile, Moran-chan and Qianji watched with excitement, eager to see which move he would use. With his hands positioned, the young man prepared to execute one of his immortal techniques. Then he shouted, "Chest exercise!" unleashing a wave of energy that repelled the blue flames. Shocked, Shuho protested that this was nowhere near an immortal technique, while the challenger boasted that he had developed it from his experience with workouts. With that, the opponent admitted he had some skill, but warned that his tricks did not end there. Soon after, the energy of the dragons dispersed, exploding into small flames around the young fighter. In an instant, the flames transformed into dozens of small lotus flowers of fire. With the arena covered in flames, Shou Huoho challenged him to try catching them with his hands. Faced with a new threat, Wingan decided he needed to use an even stronger immortal technique. Immediately, he performed the immortal technique of side-by-side jumping. At that moment, Jiangma, who was watching from afar, questioned whether he had learned his technique, but was scolded by a fellow student. With rapid movements, the young man created multiple after-images of himself that moved across the arena. Annoying, Xiaohuohu realized his rival was using the airflow from his movements to disperse the flames. With his opponent still surrounded by elemental fire energy, he prepared for a finishing strike. Thus, Xiaohuohu invoked the prison of flaming rock confinement, encircling the challenger with fire and stone. Meanwhile, Chenju and Meng Chan questioned how he could use earth techniques, and the informant noted the absence of elemental fluctuations. Soon after, Mayan bragged about Xiaohuo's 5-element switching technique, prompting the boy to complain that he was just making up names. With a smile, the opponent reflected on how the natives of this world did not understand the principles of the 5 elements. In the upper seats, Headmaster Yuang Xing ordered Huang Luhong to record the boy's technique. However, the instructor recalled the high cost of spiritual rock crystals, causing the headmaster to choke in surprise. Back in the arena, Shouhuo boasted that with knowledge of the world's principles, his techniques had infinite variations. With a new shout, he prepared to unleash his finishing strike. Then the young man executed the piercing rock explosion, causing the walls of fire and stone to collapse upon his opponent. Soon after, the rocks and flames came crashing down on Wulingan, who was trapped at the center of the explosion. Thus, Tianji and Murang-chan shouted his name, worried about the result of the attack. While the headmaster lamented the loss of his spirit stones, Huan Luhong tried to get his attention. With a chicken leg in her hand, Murang-chan prepared to rush in to save Wulingan, refusing to stand idle. However, Tuan Shouyu stopped her, insisting she should not make her brother's problems worse. With total confidence, the fox reassured her, guaranteeing that such a small technique was no problem for him. With an air of superiority, Shou Huohu declared that a native of this world could never compare to him, the son of destiny. Suddenly, the ground of the arena began to tremble and crack beneath his feet, leaving him stunned by what was happening. In a stance, everyone wondered what was going on, questioning whether it was an earthquake. With a confident smile, Tushang Xiaoyu simply declared that her brother Lingen was truly invincible. Then the ground split upward, revealing an intense yellow energy. Soon, Wulingen emerged from the rubble, performing the immortal technique of super-speed bench press. The sight left Xiaohuogo completely shocked, wondering how such a thing was possible. With that, Tu Shinaki explained that those stone slabs were nothing compared to her brother's usual training. Amid the debris, the challenger remarked that the weight was still too light for him. Irritated, Xiaohuo refused to believe that someone from this world could humiliate him. He then declared that as the chosen one, there was no way he could lose to a mere nobody. With that, the young man used the metal, borrowing the Earth's momentum technique to strengthen his weapon. Soon after, he prepared to unleash the thunder strike against his opponent. In the upper seats, the headmaster lamented that rage had clouded his grandson's judgment. making him forget his opponent's greatest ability. Back in the arena, Wing and prepared to use another of his immortal techniques. As the attack descended, the boy performed the body rotation exercise. With a spinning kick, he struck his opponent's weapon directly, shattering it into pieces. The impact of the blow was reflected in Shahuo's eyes as he watched his weapon destroyed. With his rival disarmed, Wingan turned and declared that he had lost. In the stands, Tang Xiaoliu and Murang Chan cheered his strength and victory. From afar, Mangani grew irritated, questioning how his fighter could lose to a boy without cultivation. With victory secured, the challenger began to walk away, leaving his enemy behind. "Fallen on the ground," Shohu screamed, refusing to accept defeat and ordering him to stay where he was. He then rose to his feet and begged Master Dan to lend him strength, determined not to lose that way. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like.